Yeah, hi folks. Now I think most of us know that Jacinda Ardern is dangerous and demented. And if you didn't know that before today, you most certainly will after today's video. And by the way, I often wonder if she is the Prime Minister of New Zealand or Her Excellency of the United Nations. Have a look.
I have great pleasure in welcoming Her Excellency Jacinda Ardern, Prime Minister and Minister for National Security and Intelligence, Child Poverty Reduction and Ministerial Services of New Zealand. I invite her to address the Assembly.
Ina mana, ina reo.
Now I'll just skip that bit as no one understands it.
COVID-19 was devastating. It took millions of lives. It continues to impact on our economies and with that, the well-being of our people. It set us back in our fight against the crisis of climate change.
No, there is no crisis. Climate alarmism has been caused by you because you know you're losing the argument as people in Europe can no longer afford power because of green energy policies. Now, almost every day now, we're getting climate alarmism like this from Jacinda Ardern media.
But rescues were put on hold as emergency crews found themselves in need of help.
What is this? Floating stuff.
In the churning sea, 20 Cuban migrants are missing, with 7 rescued after their boat sank. After smashing Cuba, this storm intensified, packed with powerful lightning strikes.
An evacuation of all mobile homes is recommended.
But hundreds of thousands of Floridians ignored warnings to leave, hunkering down as Ian battered and bashed its way in. Hurricane Ian is one of the most powerful storms to menace the United States in decades.
This is a really significant storm. It will be one of the storms people always remember when they think about Southwest Florida, probably be the big one.
Now here it comes, folks.
They always remember.
It's almost guaranteed there'll be another one headed the same way, but more intense and more destructive.
But more intense and more destructive.
That is the impact of the climate crisis.
That is the impact of the climate crisis. Based on what evidence?
We have our fair share of natural disasters in this country, and you'd think that we'd also have a pretty good understanding of how severe natural disasters have been in history. But all we hear in recent years is that whatever disaster we face, whether we have drought, bushfires, heavy rain, flooding or cyclones, people instantly say, we've never seen anything like this before. What was the most used word during the bushfires? Unprecedented. And it's broken all records. It's climate change. And I've got to say, as a trained skeptic, I always wonder whether they say that from proper research, history into the areas where the bushfires or floods have occurred, or just from gut feel. We may have found the answer to that this weekend. An international study by a group of Italian researchers has found that no evidence of a climate emergency in the records to date. No evidence. The study analysed data from heat, drought, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes and ecosystem productivity and could not plot a trend either up or down. Now, these authors are not climate deniers. In fact, they say we should prepare for a possible increase in disasters and do not say that no action should be taken on climate change. They're not deniers, but they stated fearing a climate emergency without this being supported by data means altering the framework of priorities with negative effects that could prove deleterious to our ability to face the challenges of the future.
Exactly.
Squandering natural and human resources in an economically difficult context. So they're basically saying, be careful you don't squander human resources, like maybe billions of dollars a year in lost coal and gas revenue. Like billions of dollars a year building an entire network of underground transmission cables to enable unreliable renewables to hook up to the national energy grid. And maybe they also mean the billions we're about to spend on green projects and the subsidies that they need to exist. Published in the European Physical Journal Plus, the scientists say a critical assessment of extreme event trends in times of global warming found the most robust global changes in climate extremes are found in yearly values of heat waves, but it said global trends in heat wave intensity were not significant. Daily rainfall intensity and extreme precipitation frequency was stationary. Tropical cyclones show a substantial temporal invariance, as do tornadoes. The impact of warming on surface and wind speed remained unclear. In other words, there is no clear upward trend in extreme weather events. And while every fear-mongering greenie is saying, we've never seen flooding like we have in recent years, the report has found the complete opposite. It states, although evidence of an increase in total annual precipitation is observed on a global level, corresponding evidence for increases in flooding remains elusive, and a long list of studies shows little or no evidence of increased flood magnitudes, with some studies finding more evidence of decreases than increases.
Now here's the actual study, folks. And I've posted a link to this below, along with other links as well.
And progress on the Sustainable Development Goals while we looked to the health crisis that was right in front of us. And while we enter a period now where the crisis is subsiding, the lessons cannot. COVID schooled us. It forced us to acknowledge how interconnected and therefore how reliant we are on one another. We move between one another's countries with increasing ease. We trade our goods and services. And when one link in our supply chain is impacted, we all are. The lessons of COVID are in many ways the same as the lessons of climate change.
Yes, COVID mandates will now become climate mandates.
When crisis is upon us, we cannot and will not solve these issues on our own. The next pandemic will not be prevented by one country's efforts, but by all of ours. Climate action will only ever be as successful as the least committed country, as they pull down the ambition of the collective.
As they pull down the ambition of the collective of global communists.
Now, I'm not suggesting, though, that we rely on the goodwill of others to make progress. We need a dual strategy, one where we push for collective effort, but where we also use our multilateral tools to make progress.
Use of multilateral tools to make progress. Wow. In other words, punish countries that don't abide by the collective. Now, folks, I'm going to skip to another part of Ardern's speech and covered by Timcast IRL. And hat tip to Superaphonic for this one.
Guys, I was freaking out earlier today because there was this story going viral about the this New Zealand Jacinda Ardern. Oh, yeah. And apparently she was calling for censorship, and I got really scared, and I started, sweating bullets, and I'm like, what's happening? Is disinformation coming? And then, thank you. Newsweek published the fact check.
Oh, cool.
Did New Zealand's Jacinda Ardern call to censor free speech?
Yes.
No.
No?
Thank you, Newsweek, for correcting the record. It's false. Oh. She didn't actually call for censoring free speech. I was worried, because this idea that a world leader would be like, we should control the flow of information really scared me. But thank you, Newsweek, for correcting the record and letting us all know what really happened. Yeah. Let me play the video just to make sure everybody understands. We're booting it up here. We got Twitter loading up. Here we go.
This week we launched an initiative alongside companies and non-profits to help improve research and understanding of how a person's online experiences are curated by automated processes.
That's not so bad, right?
This will also be important in understanding more about mis and disinformation online, a challenge that we must, as leaders, address. Sadly, I think it's easy to dismiss this problem as one in the margins. I can certainly understand the desire to leave it to someone else. As leaders, we're rightly concerned that even the most light-touch approaches to disinformation could be misinterpreted as being hostile to the values of free speech that we value so highly.
See, she says we value free speech. Why is everybody ragging on this?
But while I cannot tell you today what the answer is to this challenge, I can say with complete certainty that we cannot ignore it. To do so poses an equal threat to the norms we all value.
Norms.
After all, how do you successfully end a war if people are led to believe the reason for its existence is not only legal but noble?
Now, hold on there a minute. I agree with that. We were lied into the Iraq War. And when you tried coming out and saying this was bunk BS and we shouldn't be there, or Afghanistan for that matter, nobody believed you and the media kept lying about it. Well, wait a minute. That's the corporate press that did that.
Yes. That's the government that did that.
Whoa, yeah, that was former national security. So, what is she saying?
How do you tackle climate change if people do not believe it exists?
Think about that. Here is to get serious, like this is a despotic speech. This is the Prime Minister of New Zealand saying, if people don't believe something exists, you can't manipulate it. It's just remarkable because it's like, imagine going around as a government leader insisting that we should take action to stop the moon men from invading Earth. And you're like, but why doesn't anyone believe me when I tell them the moon men are coming? Maybe you're wrong. That's the insane thing about it. That right there is the most important part of the speech. It shows you where these world leaders want us to be. Climate change is ideological. Now, we can talk about the science behind it. That's fine, but there's a rift in politics as to whether or not people think it is or isn't happening. We just had a video the other day where Don Lemon tried pushing a NOAA scientist into saying the hurricane was intensified by climate change, and he would not do it. That's the perfect example of what I'm saying. I think there's climate change issues. I do. But I certainly think when Don Lemon as a zealot is like, how is climate change affecting this? And he goes, it's not. And he goes, well, hold on there a minute. Like, I grew up there. And I think it is. I think it is. Yeah. Okay. You're a zealot. She's clearly asserting here that she has an ideology that she wants to persist, and there is an opposition to that ideology she does not want to exist. This is the underlying message of what this psychopath is saying. We must address this issue. Yeah. The issue is they want to control what you can think, what you can hear, and what you can see, and ultimately how you'll end up voting because of it.
Yeah, the speech gets worse as it goes on. She pretty much alludes that freedom of speech is a weapon of war.
Yeah, we should.
She says that dissenting voices are evil and dangerous to her.
How do you ensure the human rights of others are upheld when they are subjected to hateful and dangerous rhetoric and ideology?
Okay, that's not disinformation or misinformation, though. That's opinion. But let's.
The weapons may be different, but the goals of those who perpetuate them is often the same: to cause chaos and reduce the ability of others to defend themselves, to disband communities, to collapse the collective strength of countries who work together. But we have an opportunity here to ensure that these particular weapons of war do not become...
Weapons of war. Wow, free speech is now a weapon of war.
...an established part of warfare.
Weapons of war.
She even admitted that it's
it gets worse. She's calling for a global censorship effort.
Is she saying that people often
it is to feel disheartened. We are facing many battles on many fronts, but there is cause for optimism, because for every new weapon we face, there is a new tool to overcome it. For every attempt to push the world into chaos is a collective conviction to bring us back to order.
Good news.
Yeah.
We have the means. We just need the collective will.
Global censorship effort. This is the end game that they're working on, that they're pushing for here. She is a globalist, World Economic Forum lackey and stooge. She has secret meetings with BlackRock. She locked down her entire country and punished people for political causes during a national, quote, health emergency. When a few cases popped up, she locked down and destroyed people's livelihoods just a few months ago, and we cannot forget that right now.
Well,
this
hold on.
speech is
Look,
dangerous, and it shows us where we're going.
Newsweek says is fake news, Luke. Newsweek says you're wrong. And I know I just listened to what she said, but I see a little meter with a needle pointing to the red one. So
and that's all you need.
That's all you need, baby.
That's all you need.
Can I take this home for just a second? So I'm in Oklahoma. Nobody looks at Oklahoma. We got 2 college football teams, and that's what people think of. But the president of the University of Oklahoma gave very much this same speech about inclusive free speech at the University of Oklahoma, of saying that, we can't have free speech unless everybody feels the same and thinks the same and says the same things. Yeah. And so that it's coming from the ground up and from the top down. And that's what we have to start realizing. And that's why I really want people who are, like me out there in the trenches in these states that maybe nobody pays attention to, looking for this in their local media, looking for this in their colleges and in their schools, because it's not just coming from leaders of New Zealand or even the United States. It's coming from your local leaders, from your university leaders, your school leaders, and your business leaders, even at a point.
Well, this is the gaslighting that's happening here. Like, you saw what she said. It's totally fake news. Don't worry. Just trust us. Again, this is the Orwellian. This is 1984. This is what they're essentially after, because if they can control information, they know that they control people's minds. And the only thing standing in the way of them subjugating and controlling everyone is people just being able to talk freely with each other. That is the biggest threat against their entire Ponzi scheme, which is their governments. And this is not just the local government of New Zealand. They are working together on a global effort with many leaders, many prime ministers, many presidents, many people behind the scenes who are really controlling them, saying, hey, we're going to push this slowly and surely. And the end goal of what she's calling for here is a global censorship board that's internationally everywhere applied to everyone on the face of this earth.
Yeah, exactly. Now, folks, I'll finish it there. Now, these young people give me some hope for the future.